Okay, so this one was hard. We have following fast-paced action requires energy. So when I'm looking at that, who's going to diagram the sentence for us? I'm going to have to look at. He's going to go off. Get that heat for a second.
Alright. Well, the way me and my partner did it was we started from, we would, ask ourselves, well, we know that verb is D and an A, so we know there's not a D and an A, so there's not going to be a verb.
No, there's always a verb. You can't have a sentence. Are you meaning an article?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
but that's not how we do it. We start at the word following. What's following, everyone?
Preposition.
Following is a preposition.
It's a verb.
It's a verb.
It's an adjective following.
No. In this sentence, it may look like an adjective, but when you take, look at me, when you take following out of the sentence and you need to put the word follow in one of the columns, where is it?
Verb.
It's a verb. So write following. Fast pace is going to act as one word. What is that? Adverb, or it's not adding to the verb. It's an adjective. Make sure you fix it on yours if yours isn't correct. What's an action? What's the word action? Excellent, as a noun. What's the word requires? Verb. Good job. Energy. What is it, everyone? Noun. If you say verb, then go I energy. I energied yesterday. I will be energizing tomorrow. So can it be a verb? I energy. Is that right, Marshall? But honestly, on a serious note, can I energy? That doesn't make sense, so it's not a verb. Okay, so now you have these sentences in the column. I think that took us 45 seconds. You then quickly move to the next activity. You look at each other and you write down the sentence. Go ahead and go on up. And then you ask yourself the question.
Oh, what?
Here, what did it? Or are there any conjunctions?
Okay. Let's see. Does your sentence have a conjunction?
No.
Alright. Everything ends and begins with a cross. Who or what did it?
Action.
Good job. Now here is where it was tricky. We're going to go ahead and go with this right here. But this is where we actually have a gerund. We have one thought together because, tell Timmy.
Wouldn't it be required?
We've not done the verb yet. You're saying you're what did it, required didn't do it.
No, I mean action.
You're what did it in the sentence. Action did it, okay? Go ahead with the next.
Alright. What did action do?
Good job. So as I do that, I mark out the words. So go action requires.
Sorry if my handwriting is bad, dude. Now, what did he see it? Oh yeah, sorry. What did requires do?
You already asked that.
I didn't. What do requires do?
Energy. Requires energy.
It requires energy. I mean, not Marshall. Darwin. To whom or for whom? To whom or for whom?
No one.
So now we go to the very beginning of the sentence. Here's where it's tricky. When I look at these words, it's following action. You can't change the word following, so that means it's not being used as an adjective. It's being used as one thought. Actually, so when you look at this, you have to go, wait, following action is one thought, is it not? Following is not describing the word action. So when I go, I then have to go, wait, I have a gerund, because the word following went right here. When I look at my two verbs, do I have require right here in the verb section? Yes. So I know I have that. Do I have following over here in the verb section? No. So if I don't have following in the verb section, I know I have a what? Quit saying one or the other. No. Quit. You know you have a verbal. Then you have to identify which verbal. You're going to want to think that following is a participle because it seems as if it's describing action. But you can't take following out and put another adjective in, and it makes sense. So that means it's not an adjective. That means I actually have a gerund. So if I have a gerund, I have a man that comes up, and I'm going to go like this. Following, and what am I following? What am I following? Action. That one was really hard. And then we have an adjective. Logan is going to label the sentence. We actually have this is not an object. When I have, when I'm looking at this, requires this, I'm almost describing my subject. Not what it has, but what it is.
Alrighty. What is this?
Gerund.
Subject.
It is the subject, but it's also a what?
Gerund.
Karen, hold on, stop right there. Can I go fast? Following fast-paced action requires. Does that make any sense? I can't stop right there, can I? So I know that this is not an object, because if it was an object, I can have a sentence without an object, can I not? I mean a direct object. I know that this somehow is describing this, and so my line is going to go backwards because this is a noun. And what side of the sentence is this on? It is on the direct object side. What side of the sentence is this on?
Right side.
Which is what side of the sentence? This is the subject side. This is the
Verb side.
the predicate. I know I have a predicate noun. This needs to be labeled as a gerund as well. Just because I'm a teacher doesn't mean I'm not still a woman. Just because I'm a gerund doesn't mean I'm not still a subject.
Alright. How do you guys spell gerund?
Like a man with a scared.
E-E-R.
I put I am.
Now, what is this?
Adjective.
Like that? Yeah. A-J, something like that.
ADJ.
Alright. What is
Verb.
Alright.
Predicate noun.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so now, tomorrow when you come into class, if you do not finish the,
I mean Thursday.
the Thursday, If you do not finish this closed reading right here, you will have it as homework. We only have a certain amount of time, and today I gave you adequate amount of time to finish at least half of the reading. We've had at least half of the reading, and the sentence. That sentence should not have taken us as long as it took us. So anyways, so when you come in, you need to sit down. You need to immediately start doing your rally coaching. We are now moving on to, we are looking at creation stories, but you have two different things going on right now. You have the assignment in your family. Someone remind me what the assignment in your family is supposed to be about. Tell me, Haley.
Our group plot planning.
Say it again.
Group plot planning.
Your group is plot planning because what are you creating?
A novel.
You're creating a novel. And a lot of times when we are creating our own novel, yes, ma'am?
We need to come up with scenes and ideas.
We need to come up with scenes and ideas. We need to be writing as if the person that's going to read it has no idea what's in her head. We also have something due in science where we have to come up with future creatures. We have to be creative, but we also have to look at the science. How would this animal have evolved from this? Now, my brain is incapable, absolutely and totally incapable. I will think, and I've learned this over years and years and years of failing. I will think I have it, that I will remember what it is I come up with, but I will not. And so when you're going through this, like on the very first video, you should have taken notes as you were going through it. Ooh, I need to include on how my animal evolved in science. I need to include, I think it's called Pangea, not Pangea. Where is it where the continents move and then they touch each other on the other side? I won't remember to put that in my explanation. Whereas I need to look at, the next thing is it needs to be scientific. You need to look up ice ages. What's happening during the time period that your animal is living? What is it? Is it an ice age? Do they have to adapt to the ice age? You have to look up what they predict the future to be. So as you're doing this, I would take notes. Like in my folder right here, I know that I've been doing research on property. And so every time I come up with something and I need to make sure I'm going to remember it, I put it down here so that when I go back to look at this, because there's no way, this is a great idea. This one bullet on the sheet could be the winning whatever to whatever it is I'm trying to do right here on my own property. If I don't write that down in a month or 2 weeks, when my lawyer calls and says, hey, what about this? I will be able to get out my notebook and go, but have we thought about this? Have we thought about this? Have we thought about this? So if you are not taking notes during this presentation and during this video, you should be, because you need to be able to go to your group today and go, hey, have we thought about this? Have we thought about this? Have we thought about this? Because you won't remember it when you leave this class. We want to think that we will, but we won't. So we're watching about 7 minutes today. This is disc 3. Will you turn that light on for just a second, Haley?
We're watching the. Good, Kaden. Kaden, reach up there and erase up.
If you want to, you can just pull down the.
I can probably reach it.
Yes.
You like Casey.
What? I heard my name. Now do I put them on just? Oh, yes, I have.
Use your computer light. No. I'll take the whole day. Use your computer light.
Go ahead and get silent.
This is the world 100 million years in the future. The climate is very warm and very humid all the time. Sea levels are more than 150 meters higher than today, creating vast, shallow swamps where mysterious creatures lurk in the dark water. Not a
Lurk is a purposely chosen word. It's Tony, but what mood does it set? Creepy. Ooh, they're lurking. They're not just chilling. They're lurking. They're lurking to probably bite your ankles as you walk through.
only is life very different now, but the planet itself has changed.
We're this way, Logan.
The Earth's crust is broken into huge plates like pieces of a jigsaw that jostle and slide over the face of the globe at a few centimeters a year. In 100 million years' time, the continents will be in completely different positions. But this movement is not the only reason the Earth looks so strange. Over millions of years, carbon dioxide from volcanoes has created a massive greenhouse effect, slowly warming up the planet, melting the ice caps, and causing the sea level to creep higher and higher at about 1 millimeter a year. In 100 million years' time, the sea will have flooded much of the dry land. So a combination of moving land masses and a rise in sea level means the globe has changed beyond recognition. And much of what looks like dry land on the globe is actually swamp. This swamp stretches for over 2,000 kilometers.
So at this 100 million year in the future time frame, one of the environments which we're looking at is a huge near coastal swamp. It's partially brackish with the influence of the ocean. It's got a huge amount of fresh water flowing down into it, reminiscent perhaps of some of the great coal swamps of 300 million years ago. Rich in life, teeming in a whole bunch of new adaptations. Very high moisture, high warmth, a steaming tropical jungle magnified.
It's just the sort of place where evolution can go wild. This mighty beast is a Toroton, and this one is about the size of an elephant.
Look at the baby.
It's descended from a very unexpected ancestor.
Well, the Toroton that roams the Earth in 100 million years' time has evolved from today's tortoises. And you can still see the similarities. It's got a shell, albeit a much reduced shell, and a long wrinkly neck, just a folded skin, and a head that's covered in scales. But there are big differences. It is big, this animal, and its legs.
Do you hear his voice? I mean, I know you hear his voice. Do you hear how he's saying it? He's not saying maybe might, would've, could've, should've. He is saying this is the future. Like, I believe him. Like, I think this turtle exists right now by the time he's done speaking. So when we are describing our future animals, we're not saying maybe you will say, this is what this turtle looks like. This is what my animal looks like because it evolved from this. It went to this. It needs it because of this. Does everyone understand that? One person understood it?
I did.
Do you have a question, Rainey? Yes.
To move from a sideways position like this in the tortoise to underneath the actual animal to support it like 4 great big pillars as it walks along, just like an elephant's legs.
I know. I think he's cute.
Any animal bigger than a ton has to support itself with legs directly under its body, not out to the side. Otherwise, it wouldn't have the strength to stand up. Once the Toroton had changed its gait to accommodate this, it could get bigger and bigger.
I hope y'all are taking notes on this stuff. Man.
The swamp is a massive area where land meets water, and it's here that the creatures of the land meet the creatures of the water. The Toroton spends most of its time reaching up for vegetation in the treetops. But there's something down at ground level that the Toroton hasn't seen yet.
Is that my baby, the Toroton? Is that what he is?
A family of swampus.
Oh, that's so gross.
They look like octopuses, and they're descended from octopuses. But this warm, humid world gives these swampers the chance to spend more time on land, at the risk of being trampled by an elephant-sized tortoise.
Get it, baby.
But a swampus can defend itself. The swampus has a deadly bite, a venom so powerful it's lethal even to something as big as a Toroton.
Poor baby. I'm done. Turn it off.
The venom is a neurotoxin. It attacks the Toroton's nervous system, first paralyzing it, then suffocating it as the Toroton's lungs stop working.
Almost as bad as when Dumbledore died.
The swampus inherits its deadly bite from its ancestors. All octopuses today are venomous to some extent, using poison to kill their prey.
You see how his little arms are
Some
sticking
are
out?
just venomous enough to stop their victims struggling. Others, like the blue-ringed octopus, have a venom 10,000 times more powerful than cyanide. Surely a case of overkill.
Look how pretty his markings are.
Yeah, like that one.
In the future, such a powerful poison has also become a defensive weapon, so the swampers can meet the new challenges of life out on the land.
This is in 100 billion years. Billion?
Along the way, it's had to adapt to a terrestrial existence and be able to actually move around and live out of the water. How does it do that? How does an octopus live out of the water? Now we know that even modern day octopuses can do that. If you've ever seen one escaping from a marine tank, it will climb up the corner and down the side and across the floor and back into the sea. So just by pulling themselves
You're listening.
arm by arm along, we know that octopuses can deal with a terrestrial mode of locomotion.
Moving on land is only one problem. The octopus also has to breathe in air.
But one thing that a modern octopus can't do right now is breathe out of the water. And that's one of the major adaptations that these swamp octopuses will have had to have invented.
A specialized lining on the inside of the body cavity has a very rich blood supply, like a lung, so the swampers can breathe in the humid air, to some extent. To move on land, 4 of its arms have become runners, allowing it to haul itself across the mud with the other 4 arms. It may look strange, but there are such halfway creatures today.
A lot of animals have adapted from aquatic habitats to terrestrial ones. And we might think of that transition hundreds of millions of years ago when amphibians first crawled up on land and began their terrestrial existence. But we don't have to go that far back because we have modern examples of that now. Mud skippers, walking catfish.
Mud skippers are very strange creatures. They're fish that can leave the water, pulling themselves along by muscular fins.
Now you don't have to fish in water now.
They can breathe out of water through their skin, and some mud skippers can survive more than 2 days on land.
You don't have to fish in water anymore.
That is so ugly.
But for a mud skipper to survive in air, it has to keep its skin wet, so it never moves too far from water.
Make sure you're processing. Okay, at this point, I think on the to-do list, on your due date sheet, you should have already picked an animal and had it approved. Am I right?
Are you able to make a species that's a plant on an animal?
You can. Yes, I think there's options, Rainey, to have it as a plant as well, but I don't know much about that. I should know. But
No, because they are researching it.
I don't know how.
you should have, like when you're thinking about it, they are basing what is happening in the future off current animals, right? And did you see the detail they gave about that? They even turned him upside down to show how his feet would move and what that would look like. So as you're watching this right now, it's just not in entertainment because this is an incredible video. It is that you are processing and taking notes of what you want to do to your animal or plant.
In all those cases, what we see is a tie to the aquatic habitat, either for breathing or for reproduction. And the same is true of our octopus. They can't get very far from the swamp. They're tied to the water that they have to go back to replenish their oxygen supply.
In the future, there's a very good reason for the swampers to venture out onto land to raise their young. The baby swampers are kept in a nursery inside this plant, where they're fed and protected.
That is so. So you have those animals to include your farm. That's an ugly baby. No, dear. I'm looking for the feet.
The youngsters of this octopus are perfectly good prey items. But by clustering them all together within what amounts to a nursery inside of this space, the adult octopuses, which have a venomous bite, can gather around and protect the young octopi. They can bring in food to feed to them and, in a sense, keep an eye on them. You may think that we have just, in this reconstruction, invented a piece of science fiction. No, all we've done is change the players and shown you something that's going on at this very instant on this planet now. If one goes to the island of Jamaica, for example, you can observe a particular terrestrial crab that lives in the funnel-shaped leaves of a pineapple relative called a bromeliad.
The plant traps rainwater, a private pool in which the bromeliad crab
We are going to stand up, shake it off, go to the bathroom. when we get back in.
Alexa.
There's crabs that live in pineapples. We need to fear turkeys more than crabs. They evolved from
That was so kind.
Tyrannosaurus rexes.
Yeah.
They're planning something. Oh, wonder what it. I'm pretty sure they do like Tyrannosaurus Rex except turkeys.
No,
No, they have tiny cells. And they'd be like,
However,
they'd stand like Tyrannosaurus Rex except they'd still be fat. So it's the funniest thing. That's like Tyrannosaurus Rex.
no, my sister.
Tiny wings.
No. It sounded
Bravo.
Who's great? Who's great? Bravo. That's an awesome team.
Maybe you need to get your phone and call Weather Mattress Direct and just have them bring you one.
You know that dog I told you I got this shit? Well, he stayed in his home.
He did what?
He stayed in that, we cut up the berry.
Excuse me? Yeah.
The whole summer.
Wait, Brayden. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead with your partner. You said we're gonna start at 4. So your partner. Okay, so you are going to stand with your partner and you're going to do the eye contact thing. So you're shaking your right arm, shaking your left arm, shaking your right leg, shaking your left leg,
Okay, you look at her, I look at you.
So are we ready? No. I'm leading it. Stand up. You need to look your partner in the eye. So you can do it in groups of 3. Why am I battling for the floor? So look at your partner in the eye. Are we ready? 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 2, 1. 2, 1. 2, 1. 2, 1. 1, 1, 1.
I told her to do this.
We have started a new writing prompt, and you will see when you go underneath creation stories. We have actually not, have we written our writing prompt down?
No.
Okay, I don't know how I missed that. Okay, so we're starting a new writing prompt, and so it's the Let's Write. So you're going to find the prompt, type it on a Google document. Then we're going to analyze what the prompt means or what the prompt is asking from us. Have we shared our creation stories in here?
No.
Awesome. Yes.
Could do the graphics and then do the whole entire class.
I don't know. Let me get to the instructions. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a document. We remember that we can cut and paste. The writing prompt is actually on the instructions on the front, but also it's also here on the board. You're not going to write what we've already marked off here. If we hit my heat, Alexa. You're going to put writing prompt colon, because we remember after the word colon, and I really got to see it last night, by the way. They had a free SAT at the school, and my son may or may not have done well on it. Hold on. So, the best part about this pre-SAT is I got to see the test last night. He brought it home. I got to see his answer sheet and the pre-SAT, and wow. A lot of that English is, do you put a colon here? Do you put a comma here? And if you use the comma tricks, I looked at it truly to make sure I was backing, because sometimes things change. The way you use a comma, the way you use a comma before so, everyone. I went to the store, so I got ice cream. Do I use a comma before so?
No.
No, I do not. This is going to ask you that. Where do I use a colon? And Preston said to me, well, I've never used a colon in my life. And I go, I know, buddy. I know you. Neither of you, Haley, neither of you, sister. Let's be real. Neither of any of us. I have to make myself use colons now, because I want to vary my writing. But before making myself use colons, I don't either. So we're going to be real with Preston. We're not going to judge him for not knowing a colon if we don't use a colon. And so he said, I've never used a colon. So he picked something else or a comma when they were about to list three things. Even if they're listing one thing, it's my favorite foods, colon, pizza. I eat my favorite foods. Oh, that's not on the list, but you can have a list of one thing. Put your bottom up. Make sure your bottoms are up. So that's why we're doing things the way we're doing. So writing prompt, you need to have a colon after it. It is never centered. Today is not a new day. Today we are not doing it any different than we have ever done. Today we are not changing the font of anything, and not because I like or have control issues, but simply because for the rest of your life you will be writing in APA or MLA format, and they don't allow you to have pretty fonts. So we are not going to have pretty fonts. Writing prompt is going to be on the left-hand side, and you are going to copy and paste the writing prompt next to the word writing prompt. You have 1 minute. I had it on this morning. When you are done writing that, you are going to look at your partners, because we are only as strong as the weakest link. No, you don't worry about anything other than that means we close.
Colon is like, it's like a time. So like 10, it's like 10 colons.
Use your own participant.
It's there. No, this is colon right here. That's great. Your first shift. And there you go.
Okay, so now we have our writing prompt. This is our roadmap. Why is roadmaps important? Because if you do not follow your roadmap, just to keep doing Preston stories, but just like last night, Preston was supposed to be analyzing a poem, and did the author explicitly say it, or did the author, directly say it or indirectly say it? He wrote a beautiful summary of that poem. But that wasn't the instructions, was it? The instructions was to talk about direct or indirect use of the author, because sometimes the author can paint us a picture, but not say it directly. So that is indirectly. He totally missed the whole assignment. That is why we write the writing prompt up here at the top. I said, Preston, why didn't you write the writing prompt at the top? Why is it on the back? He said, I don't know, but I probably should have. Maybe that's why everyone else's was on the same page. So we write our writing prompt. We refer back to our writing prompt. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get a professional courtesy. Women, look here. Our story, no matter what. Okay, let's see. No matter what. So Miss, I have a creation story, how the earth was created, and I totally believe in this creation story. Miss Powell has a belief of how the earth was started, and she totally believes in that. Now let's say I believe my creation story is spaghetti, and her creation story is God. We are going to be respectful and mindful towards each other's creation stories. She may in her head go, well, that's a little silly, or because mine's the spaghetti one, or who makes a creation story to make fun of another creation story? That in itself tells me about you. They don't have anything better to do with their life than to make fun of another religion, but okay. Let's fly spaghetti. Yes. So she in her head, though, she's never going to say it, but in her head, she's going to know hers is the truth. Hers is the actual historical count. Every other count is a fictional portrayal of the creation story. Right? To her, and I, same thing. Mine is the actual historical account. And your all's is obviously, a God, fictional. And I believe in that God, but I'm just being the other person. Yes. So go with it. Go, Miss here is an atheist. So, what we are doing is we are going to take your historical account, because this is and we're going to compare it to other fictional accounts. But first we need to think about our historical account of what we believe or how we believe the earth is created. So what you're going to do in your group, and you're going to have 3 minutes to prepare. You can do it on like a piece of paper in your notebook to kind of look up stuff so that you can look down and see what you're referring to. Is you're going to remind yourself how you believe the earth was created, the story. And so Miss Powell and I, we're in a group, she's not going to look at me and say, Jesus did it, holla, done, that's my story. Sticking to it. Because that's not her, that is her belief, that is not her story. She needs to tell me her story as if she is telling me a narrative, as if she's telling me a bedtime story, as if she's telling me a fictional story. She needs to tell me in detail-ish, as much detail as we can remember, we all don't have it memorized, about it as if she's telling it to a child, as if she's telling a bedtime story. Does everyone understand?
Yes, ma'am.
And then when she's done telling me her bedtime story, I'm not going to look at her, maybe be disrespectful in any way. I may disagree on different events. I may disagree completely. Maybe she believes in that, and I believe that the Big Bang Theory. We can both agree to disagree. We can both have different opinions and still be incredible friends. Does everyone understand that? Now, if she said we should, if she's Hitler and says we should kill all Nazis, then I can't be her friend. And I'm not saying to be friends with somebody that is ethically different than you, but we can be friends with somebody that believes something different than we believe, right? So we're gonna watch our facial expressions when they're telling. I saw some facial expressions yesterday, like if your facial expression's like, that's not very respectful, is it? No. So we're gonna watch our facial expressions as we hear people's creation stories. I'm going to give you 4 minutes to silently prepare for how you want to deliver your creation story to your people at your table. Are there any questions? You have 4 minutes. Great. The best part about the word silent, the word quietly infers that you can speak, but it's got to be quietly.
Can I do research?
Yes. The word silent means, can you speak?
No.
No, because you are
Silent.
silent. You have 4 minutes to ponder, self-reflect, look at any details you want to look at. Again, the word silently means do not, when I say go, look at the person next to you and start talking. You cannot find a copy of someone else's. You cannot go to Genesis and read that to them. You have to tell it as if it's a story. Now, write small details, like if they didn't know how the 7 days went, if that's their creation story. But you're not gonna be able to read from your computer, you can only jot down like, okay, this happened on day 1, this happened on day 2.
That's what.
Okay. Okay, look, we're coming up with our creation story, we're gonna share how we believe that was created. We're gonna tell it as if it's a children's story. Give about 1 minute. We are in essentially groups of 3 or 4, so it'll be 4 right here. 3, you're gonna scoot up with them for just a minute. 3, 3, 3, 3. We're gonna do 5. Oh, just 5 here, and then 4 here. You're gonna start with one person. We're gonna be mindful and respectful of the person telling their creation story. We're gonna be a professional courtesy. You cannot read directly from someone else's. You cannot go to Genesis or a Bible story, if that's what your creation story is, and read from that. So you're just simply telling them your story as if you would tell a child your story. Are we ready? Are you ready? Go. Stop, look, and listen. There's no way you have completely written down this your creation story. It wasn't for you to write down a creation story. 4 minutes is not enough time to type a whole creation story. What you are to do is to bring it back to mind. You're going to tilt your computer and you're going to look at them and tell them from the beginning of your creation story to the end of it, the whole story, as if you're telling a story, as if you're telling an event that happened yesterday. Does everyone understand that? Go.
Okay, so it says 4.54 billion years ago, the galaxy was formed and volcanic outcasts exploded and created Ryan, he retired. Really? He retired like a year ago. Ryan Philippotomus. He retired like 3 years ago. No, he didn't, because he was racist. He volunteered to.
That's me.
3 or 4 races.
Yes, dear.
That's me.
I know, right?
They raced each other like.
Yeah, he volunteers to. Oh,
You know, like a race.
yeah, he volunteered to because he didn't have enough people in that class.
What was
In my Uncle Shane, he run Betty did.
Yeah.
Look it up. 2018 That would have been 2018.
Yeah, one run out of like 30.
He beat him 2 I'm pretty sure it was best of 3. Ryan won 1 and Shane won 1, and he got his lane down there.
Well, first he did
That, look it up. Ryan Duncan, Shane McElrath, straight from Rhythm Race.
Shane McElrath.
Yeah, we kind of like, you know. You didn't know that? Didn't really write it down, but my mom's saying that in my dad here.
What did you like your 4 cousins?
Hey, Mom.
Wait, what?
No, he looked like my uncle.
So he's not.
And then
Yeah, they technically is considered my uncle. Yeah, it is. I can't figure it out.
So my mom got married.
Okay, so who wants to, are we all ready?
No.
Okay, continue, sorry.
Hey, what do you think?
Okay, so who wants to share their creation story with us? Come on up. If you're going to share your creation story,
Yes.
stand up. Come on. We got time for this.
Shut up. No, Casey. No. Yes, no.
Okay, come on. Come on.
Okay, I said the Earth was created about 4.54 billion years ago. One galaxy was formed, and then volcanic outcast exploded and created the land and the ocean.
Who else wants to share? Haley's going to share hers. Remember, we're not battling for the floor.
4 billion years ago, there was nothing, and then bam, one big explosion, and there was the universe. We didn't exist yet, but that's a lot to go through. The Earth back then was above 100 Fahrenheit, and life is not sustainable. No plants, no animals, nothing. Then after a few rain showers, there was a portion life. That was all I got down. But I'm not that fast again.
Do you know the rest of your story though, without writing it down?
Yeah.
Tell it to us.
First, there was bacteria and plants. Then, some animals started to form, like fish and insects, I believe. A few billion years later, I believe, would have been probably a billion. The first amphibian took the first step on land. Animals started to grow and expand. Soon enough, we're in the Jurassic period and the Triassic, where there we have dinosaurs and strange animals. Animals that look like, I'm just going to go ahead and say this, velociraptors with feathers. Soon enough, there was a meteor that hit the Earth. Then, as soon as it happened, life started all over again. This time, there wasn't dinosaurs, but more or less humans. Primates were the first. Since they had 5 fingers, that's naturally where we got our 5 fingers from. And our lungs, they came from having to learn to live on the terrestrial. Our eyes, that's kind of self-explanatory. Our sense of touch, for some of us who can't see or are sometimes blindfolded, we have to use the feeling of touch to know what we're feeling. Sense of smell, to smell food, obviously.
Oh yeah, I agree with that. KFC.
Yes. Our sense of hearing would be to obviously have to hear Miss Tyler.
Who knew?
But she can't hear us.
Good job. That's for for my survival too.
Stop.
I said because she can't hear us. That's why Kira didn't hear better.
Do this.
Oh,
Go ahead and get silent. Professional courtesies app.
The way I think it happened is God created the galaxy, planets, stars, skies. Then he created atoms and materials. Then he created crustaceans, which soon to be evolved into animals and dinosaurs to start off with. And then he used asteroids to wipe out dinosaurs, like it basically put the clear button on for the video game, basically. And he covered it up with layers and layers of soil, dirt, and water. Then he created animals, primates, humans, and we evolved to this stage.
Excellent. Anyone else?
Flat earthers kind of have a funny thought on how the asteroid hit the Earth.
Who does?
Flat earthers, people who think the Earth is flat.
Currently? They currently think the Earth is flat?
Yes,
You need to go to your creation story document. We're going to read our first creation story. Go ahead and get silent. Okay, so following our runner strategy, we are going to read the title and make a prediction. The title is The Earth on Turtle's Back. What on earth can we be talking about?
Ninja Turtles.
How can an Earth be on a turtle's back? Okay, turtle's round.
If you've ever seen this,
We need to. What is? I'm so sorry, Haley. We had someone asking a question. We have someone answering a question. It wasn't a conversation that was left over to the entire class. So we should be looking. If you wanted to answer, you should raise your hand. Just like.
if you've ever seen the Cruise, I think this was, they had turtles in the movie that were flying and had like environments on their back.
Okay.
So I'm guessing that's where the idea came from.
Okay. So then we would go and underline keywords in the questions. We don't have questions. We would number the paragraphs. It's one ginormica one. Then we would start reading. I think Haley thinks that this is a current and that's okay that she thinks that. This is not a current. This is a creation story from way back in the day. So this is what one civilization used as their creation story. It is not a current creation story, nor is it a fictional like the guy for Disney made this. It's a very old creation story. Yeah, it's their belief system. So the Earth on Turtle's Back. Before Earth was here, there was only water as far as one could see in all directions, with birds and animals swimming around in it. Up above in the clouds, there was Skyland. In Skyland was a great and beautiful tree with 4 white roots stretching to the 4 sacred directions. Every kind of fruit and flower grew from its wide-spreading branches. The chief of Skyland's young wife was expecting a child. One night, she dreamt she saw the great tree uprooted. The next morning, she told her husband her dream. "This is very sad," he said, "for it is a dream of great power, and we must do all we can to make it come true." Then the chief called all the men together and told them they must uproot the tree. But the roots were so deep and strong, they couldn't budge it. So the ancient chief himself wrapped his arms around the tree and strained until with one last great effort, he uprooted it. Now there was a great hole where the tree's roots had been. The chief's wife came and leaned over to look down, holding the tip of one of the uprooted tree's branches to steady herself. Far below, she thought she saw something glittering like water. Leaning out further, she lost her balance and fell into the hole. Her hand slipped from the tip of the branch, leaving her only a handful of seeds as she fell. Far, far below in the waters, some of the animals looked up. "Someone is falling from the sky," said one. "We must help her," said another. Then 2 swans flew up and caught her between their wings and brought her gently down to the water where the birds and animals were watching. "She is not like us," said one of the animals. "She doesn't have webbed feet. I don't think she can live in the water." "What shall we do?" said another of the water animals. "I know," said one of the birds. "I have heard there is earth far below the waters. If we dive down and bring up earth, she will have a place to stand." So the birds and animals tried to bring up earth. First, Duck dug far down beneath the surface, but he couldn't reach the bottom and floated back up. Then Beaver tried. He went even deeper, so deep that it was all dark, but he couldn't reach the bottom either. Then Loon tried and was gone a long, long time, but he too failed to bring up earth. Soon it seemed that all had tried and failed. Then a small voice spoke. "I will bring up earth or die trying." They all looked to see who it was. It was Little Muskrat. She dove down and swam and swam. She was not as strong and swift as the others, but she was determined. She went so deep that it was all dark, and still she swam deeper. Her lungs felt ready to burst, but she swam deeper still. At last, just as she was becoming unconscious, she grasped at the bottom with her little paw and floated upwards, almost dead. When the other animals saw her break the surface, they thought she had failed. Then they saw her right paw was held tightly shut. "She has the earth," they said. "Now where can we put it?" "Put it on my back," said a deep voice. It was Great Turtle, who had come up from the depths. They brought Muskrat over and placed her paw against his back. To this day, there are marks at the back of Turtle's shell that were made by Muskrat's paw. The tiny bit of earth fell on the back of Turtle. Almost immediately, it began to grow and grow until it became the whole world. Then the 2 swans brought Sky Woman down. She stepped onto the new earth and opened her hand, letting the seeds fall onto the bare soil. From the seeds, the trees and grass and flowers sprang up. Life on earth had begun. This is a creation story from the Onondaga tribe, from Keepers of the Earth, by Michael J. Caduto and Joseph Bruchac. Bruchac. That was perfect timing.
Get ready for Read 180.
Send a kid to heat that. Come stick it in for 60 seconds. Girl, it feels so good. It's already feeling better.